I'm Bobby Kelly.
And it's Big J. Okerson. We're actually a full radio show on Sirius XM, not just a podcast.
For full episodes of The Bonfire, you can listen on the Sirius XM app.
Go to SiriusXM.com/bonfire for a special offer.
And now, The Bonfire with Big J. Okerson and Robert Kelly.
Yeah, baby, we're back.
So excited.
Jay, I haven't seen him this excited in a long time.
He told you we met once before, right? In a dark kitchen, I think Cincinnati.
Yeah.
That is the scariest thing I've ever heard anybody say. Jesus Christ.
No, but I was there to tell her that this is dangerous and she shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
So, that's what I just do. I come in and I go to the girls' houses and I
because you're a good
them.
Samaritan, right?
Yeah. I let them know. Sure. I brought condoms in Wendy's.
Sure, I have double stuffed Oreos and I'm wearing fingerless mittens.
I wasn't making it about me exactly. We have an amazing guest in studio with us. Very, very exciting, everyone. He has a new show, Takedown, available right now on True Blue at watchtrueblue.com. And his podcast, Predators I've Caught, is available wherever you listen to podcasts. It is the legend, Chris Hansen, joining the show, everybody.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's so weird hearing your voice in person, I know.
It is. I feel like I got caught doing something.
Yeah, you look guilty.
I know the voice is associated with finding out you've done something terrible, so I love that.
Well, it's funny because even on the weekends, if I'm at Home Depot with a ball cap and I'm unshaven and nobody recognizes my face, if I open my mouth, it's all over.
Yeah.
They know exactly.
If you're at Home Depot and you go, excuse me, and go, I didn't do anything.
Yeah. They get very nervous.
Yeah.
You've inspired a whole genre of YouTube video and YouTube content creators in taking down pedophiles. Is that a good feeling for you? Do you feel like, because it's, I know the flip side of it. I've gone on 3 of the the YouTube people.
Sure.
I just tagged along with them or came and
on
watched.
the actual stings.
Yeah. And it's the but I've been there for them, and I will say that I do feel like outside of the public humiliation, there's not really much more they can do with it than that. It's
I think, and I get into trouble every time I venture down this road, but I'm going to go there again anyway. But I think there's a real place for citizen journalists. Mm-hmm. And I think YouTube and other social media platforms have allowed that to take place. Podcasts, where the solution of crimes is crowdsourced. It's very valuable stuff. But I can tell you this, and I know this firsthand, that when civilians do stings without collaborating with law enforcement, it makes those cases very difficult to prosecute. And that's just the fact. Now, there are some very diligent people out there outing some very bad predators. There's no question. And some of them have been in lofty positions of power. And I've interviewed some of them, and they get angry with me sometimes, some of them, because I'm a little harsh in terms of the bad side of this.
Sure.
So there's one guy, for instance, who goes out and he trolls somebody online. The guy shows up in a hotel room, and he pretends that he's part of a larger organization and affiliated with law enforcement. Sure. And all he really does is call 911. So my question is, what happens when the situation gets volatile, which it can, and the alleged predator gets violent, and an unwitting police officer walks into this volatile situation without really knowing what's going on?
Sure.
There's no coordination. Now, we work with law enforcement agencies around the country on our takedown predator stings, as well as many other types of investigations and documentaries. So we have a system in place that makes this as safe as it possibly can be. I get it. It's edgy. People watch it because, what if the guy does this? Or what if the guy does that? Or what if Chris can't get out of the way?
Sure.
But we have ensured the safety and integrity of these investigations as much as humanly possible.
Well,
can't they go? I'm sorry. Can't they go? They can go away too. They can, because if you're not going to catch them,
right,
they can disappear. And
They
if
can
they disappear, they do it again.
They're not prosecuted.
Right.
Or they think they can do it again. Now, I've seen cases. We did a sting in Ohio, in Montgomery County. A guy shows up in our sting operation. He's arrested. I confront him in a very aggressive interview. While he's facing charges, 2 weeks after our sting, he shows up in a hotel room in a neighboring town with a teenage girl and having sex with her. And the only reason law enforcement in that community in Troy, Ohio, got wind of it was because the mother reported the girl missing, pinged her phone, it comes back to this hotel room, and they knock on the door. So here he is out pending further investigation after being confronted by me and the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department, and he's in a hotel room with a teenage girl 2 weeks later. Wow. And so these guys will reoffend, some of them.
Well, I watched some of the clip today we were sent of you interviewing somebody you've caught before. Is that what the podcast is going to be across the board? Because I'm very curious of the psyche of that, because of everyone knowing about the YouTube stings, takedown, back to Catch a Predator. They're still compelled to try and do it.
It shocks me to this very day.
It's really something that's compelling them.
If you had asked me 20 years ago, now it'll be 20 years next month since the very first Predator investigation in Bethpage, Long Island, the very first one. And we didn't do that with law enforcement. It was only the third investigation when we realized, look, we need to do this in a socially responsible way. But if you had asked me if 20 years later we'd still be doing these investigations, I would not have believed you. I would have said no. Who's going to show up?
Yeah, you'd have thought the investigations would have been the end of traveling pedophiles.
We'd do it 2 or 3 times, and who the heck's going to show up? But the story that you're talking about is an exclusive interview. It's the first time this has happened in 20 years, and it's on True Blue. I do the podcast. We look at past cases, and sometimes the guys will respond, and I'll have a few words with them. But this particular case, Dr. Joswal, Parminder Joswal, a 61-year-old physician who surfaced last March in an investigation with the Genesee County Sheriff Ghost Team. I confront him. He was there to meet a teenage girl. He chatted with her all day with the decoy, posing as this teenage girl, as he saw 18 patients in his practice and found time to continue this conversation and send a picture of his penis. And he shows up, nicely dressed, Range Rover, and he walks in and grabs the on-site decoy from behind, a sheriff's department employee who looks like a teenage girl. And I go out and confront him, and he basically stammers and comes up with excuses and admits it looks bad and blah, blah, blah. Then he gets arrested by the sheriff's department. Fakes a heart attack. I mean, the video is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty.
And then they take him away. So now they go through his phone. Has he been with children before? Is he predisposed to being a pedophile or a predator? No. What he is somebody who had a addiction to pornography and to sex sites and had sought out relationships in the past where he gave women money in exchange for sex. And he had some, he liked to be the sugar daddy.
This is his first time.
Not his first time, but the first time that law enforcement could determine with a teenager.
Right.
So he gets a great lawyer, and they enter into a plea agreement. His sentencing is January 22nd. And as part of that, he's got to do community service. He'll probably avoid jail time. He spent 4 nights in the county jail, came this close to committing suicide. He had to give up his medical practice.
What kind of doctor was he?
He was a general practitioner, family practitioner.
Wow.
So his life is altered forever.
Sure.
And they put him in the community to do community service?
Well, because he's been in intensive therapy, faced his demons, and said, look, I don't want to be this guy. Thank you for catching me, essentially. I have my life back in terms of I'm alive. My wife has stayed with me. My adult children, who are so disappointed and angry, have stood by me. And now I have to rebuild my life. But before I can do that, I've got to get the word out to other men who are contemplating doing what I did and stop them. And the judge in Genesee County, Michigan, looked favorably upon that. And the sheriff, who had to sign off on this plea agreement because his employee got her behind grabbed, that's assault and battery.
Yeah.
So we'll see, but it appears to me, and I sat with him face to face and did a very intensive interview. I think he gets it.
You think so?
I think in this case, and I don't say that willy-nilly here.
I'm wondering
Because a lot of people say they're going to turn it around when you confront them, of course.
Because you're in these situations and you're catching these terrible people doing terrible things. But when you see them at the end and they know that they're caught and it's over have you ever felt bad? Do you feel like
I feel
empathy
for some of them? Yeah, I do. And I think for some of them, it is their first time.
Yeah.
But beyond that,
well, so
I think there are a lot of guys like the one in Ohio I described earlier who, but for law enforcement intervention or getting caught and exposed on one of my programs, they're going to keep doing it.
Have you ever
the issue that I also have with the YouTube one, the kind of like the homegrown pedophile stings, is the idea that like, one, I don't know like their rationale if it's just like for clicks or not. It's pretty lighthearted overall, but again, like I don't know like if you're getting the sympathy. Like a lot of these people show up happen to be, mentally challenged for sure.
Right.
Beyond
and we've
the
seen
idea,
that in our investigations.
I remember
too.
the famous Oops.
Oops, yeah.
That was one of my favorite.
Well, I saw the guy. This guy shows up in Riverside County, and you can see he's got a scar on the side of his head. And his main concern once he gets there, now the chat was graphic.
Sure.
There's no doubt in my mind he was going to assault a child sexually if he had the opportunity. But he's more worried about going to the bathroom. So he got a bit of a pass. I mean, he made the movie but didn't have a big role. But then some months later, he shows up in another investigation in Long Beach, California, and we find out he did a year in jail for a violent assault. You're making the movie, brother.
Yeah. But there's also something, too, with some of them, like, why you can believe a lot of times that it is true when it's like, this is my first time doing this, is because I don't know how easy this is probably to pull off unless it's being a... That's why I'm saying I don't know how you can assume it's not a sting operation, because how could it go that great? You know what I mean? Like, that's why I assume... I said these people, a lot of them where I feel a little bad for them is the person when they get there, I go, this person would have showed up if you said the girl was 8 years old, 81 years old, 104, 36. That they just, their lives are just like...
I just want to say sorry for accidentally touching you gently.
Yes.
I apologize. He was talking,
gesticulating,
and my hand,
yeah.
we gently touched, and I was like, oh, God. I felt so bad.
We'll have a word about that later.
I swear to God.
I've got the transcripts right here.
I'm going to put my hands in my hoodie.
Yeah, do that, please. At least wear rubber gloves or something. Now, I buy into that. I understand what you're saying, and I have that emotion, too, from time to time. But then you look at another case, like one we saw about a year ago. We did a whole documentary on True Blue on it. And it was the strange case of Peter Pejic. All right, this 12-year-old girl shows up at a hospital. Obviously, she's been sexually violated, physically harmed. What happened? On Instagram, he approached this girl, convinced her, flew up from Florida, convinced her to climb out of the bedroom window, meet him in a church parking lot. He takes her to a hotel and has groomed her over a period of days into thinking that he's going to give her some money and buy her other things that she wants. These guys are very good at finding vulnerable kids, and they do find these kids, and they do sexually assault them. We had a guy in Ohio as well who copped out to me, and it was later confirmed had done this at least twice before with teenage kids.
Do you have to help
in multiple states?
Do you have to go to the kids too, because now they're programmed? Now they're damaged.
Well,
and they might seek this out again.
It's possible,
right?
And so you've got to break the chain. So how do you do it? I can do all the investigations that I can possibly put together, and we will continue. And law enforcement does this independent of what we do all the time.
Sure.
But yet these guys show up. So the best protection for children is the dialogue and the conversation they have with their parents. That's your first line of defense.
Sure.
I mean, some of these guys can go to intensive therapy and never offend again. Some are hardcore heavy hitters that the guys would be doing this with or without the internet. And some are opportunists who might be in their early 20s, socially awkward.
Sure.
They think, okay, this is Romeo and Juliet. She'll be older one day. And they do it. But I would argue that it's just as damaging for a 19 or 20-year-old to do this to a 13 or 14-year-old as it is for a 39 or 40-year-old to do it. It's the same danger. The treatment, the punishment might be different, but the same danger is present when you talk about how it can harm a child.
Have you ever heard somebody be, I mean, they're always scared when they get caught and bummed they're caught, but have you ever met anyone yet super unapologetic? When it came down to, I know the pizza guy was a good example, but maybe later he was like, no, I fucked up.
Here, I'll tell you a story about him. He tried to change his name. He went to court, Jeff Sokol.
Yeah.
Because it's, the pizza thing just became so iconic, And the judge said, not only will I not allow you to change your name, he wanted to seal the court records so people would not know that he attempted to change his name. He said, I'm not going to seal the court records.
Really?
Off you go.
So now people know you tried to change it.
They know exactly who he is.
That's interesting.
And I've tried to interview him, too, and he's thus far declined.
I bet.
Has anybody come in? What's the percentage of people that, because you have to get them in and they have to get into the house. Is it what do you have? They have to do to be arrested? Just show up or come in the house?
Generally speaking, and this varies from state to state, but most of the time, the solicitation online constitutes the commission of a felony. So, in Florida, when we do these stings, they will at some point afterwards, if the guy doesn't show up, they'll go out and find them.
Right.
Not always,
just
not always,
the texts
but
are enough.
But the texts are enough, and I mean that's why these cases have a virtual 100% conviction or plea bargain rate, because the evidence is right there. You said it, you did it, we preserved it, and it's the other reason why we decided to collaborate with law enforcement many years ago is that Perverted Justice, the online watchdog group with which we collaborated in the beginning, they were great. They did a great job, phenomenal, dedicated people. But every once in a while, there would be an issue in terms of the chain of custody of the chats. And now, with the chatters being sworn law enforcement, that issue goes away.
That's nice.
Because this is a big thing right now. And like online, and the child, they just made that movie about child trafficking and the Epstein Island, and I mean, and they're saying all of Hollywood, you have to have sex with a child and drink child blood. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, some of that's conspiratorial nonsense too.
Yeah, of course. But is any of this?
I keep telling him that, but Bobby keeps eating baby's blood trying to get into the Illuminati.
I'm 100 years old.
You look good.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah. You're welcome.
But those cases are out there. I mean, we did a big documentary for Investigation Discovery a couple years ago on Peter Nygaard.
Oh yeah.
And here's a guy who had that big compound in the Bahamas, and I think he's been charged or been accused of hundreds of sexual assaults.
Yeah, they should have looked at his hair and saw he was good for it, though.
What a
wacky looking fella.
God almighty.
He's into something weird.
But here's a guy, who was literally, according to the evidence collected by the investigators, impregnating young women, encouraging them to have abortions so he could harvest the stem cells to inject in himself in a quest for youth. I mean, who thinks of that?
I'm 100 years old.
Yeah. Besides you. Yeah.
Besides you. I also find interesting with the few things that I've gone on. I watched the show Underage Undercover. Is that what it's called? Did you see that? That was
I sure did. The woman in Connecticut.
Now they go. I know we don't really see the actual the sting itself happening on your shows, but when they show this, they go, I have to say, above and beyond what would be necessary to catch these people. Yeah. They're I said, they get involved in online. They have to let the guy jerk off on camera with them, and do they really
we see
they get
some of
so
that
involved.
Too. Some of these conversations go on for days and days.
Yeah,
and before the guy actually shows up, and some never show up. Some guys are just getting off by having the conversation and doing as you suggested.
Is this just a male thing, or is there
it's interesting you bring that up. So we've never seen a female in our stings, right? And yet it seems every week there's another female teacher having sex with a student. I mean, it's epidemic. We've done stories on these for True Blue.
Is it socially acceptable?
I don't think it's socially acceptable. I think what happens is, according to the therapist with whom we've talked about this, the female predator doesn't like the anonymity. So you're more likely to see the teacher-student scenario where the male predator gets off on the anonymity. They like that. But I have never, in my 42-year career, seen so many cases back-to-back of female teachers.
New one today.
Every week there's a new
today
one. We're actually commissioning a documentary on it.
Really?
Yeah.
If you look at the movies I grew up on, I mean, high school kid or, whatever, junior high, you bang your teacher and you get a high five, you know what I mean? And like
I understand.
The Lady Chatterley stuff and you're coming up, it's almost like
But it does damage to a child.
Yeah.
Right? So what's that boy going to be looking for when he's 16, 17, 18? We did a big story on
He was already a Mexican 13-year-old with a full mustache and beard. So that's how I think it happens always. I think those little Hispanic kids are already facial haired up.
We have a case down in Tennessee where the accused teacher is married to a sheriff's deputy and was having the kid allegedly over to the house and is apparently pregnant by this kid.
What?
Yeah, no, it's twisted, but you're right. Every week there's a new case.
Oh yeah.
Well, I remember when I was coming up, sex for a boy, you weren't in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, sex was, you tried to have sex. You were the motherfucker if you hooked up with the neighbor
But it never happened.
Well,
At least to me, I don't know. I don't know where you were, but
Everyone just lied about it.
Well, I hooked up when I was younger in foster homes with not a 38-year-old, but the neighbor, and I was a king. I was, that story got me a lot of fucking, dude, what? Yeah. And when I look back on it, I would be horrified if my kid did that. It would suck.
Well, we did a case where a 13-year-old was hanging out with other 13-year-olds, and there was a girl who said she was 16 but was actually 26, ends up taking this kid, on a cross-country excursion, obviously sleeping with him. They find him after being missing for 3 or 4 days, and now the mother's got to put the genie back in the bottle here. And how do you do that as a single parent? It's challenging. It's kids. There's a reason why we have an age of consent in society.
I think we know more
to protect
now.
the kids.
Right?
I think we totally know.
We know more now. When we were coming up, you didn't talk about sex. Your parents didn't talk to you about sex. Irish Catholic from Boston. No, anything happens, you bury it. You don't tell anybody except your friends.
Well, that's exactly why all this stuff comes out so many years later.
Right.
Look at all the Catholic Church stuff that's come out.
And now I think it's, parents are, you talk to your kid about sex at an earlier age.
Especially on the internet. I mean, when I was growing up, I'm older than all you guys. I mean, it was a big deal to find Playboy magazines in your buddy's dad's garage in a box. That was as close to porn as we got.
Yeah, we used to
Bobby's son's 10 and he's looking up Hispanic fat asses. That's actually true. Right?
Well, it's anything is available, and that's why you have to monitor what your kids are doing.
1 second. I'm sorry, touch you.
You
I'm
touched
going to
me,
touch you. That was between me and you, and I said personally. But now it's on the
It's out
radio
there.
with the guy.
No, I didn't talk about the other dark stuff.
No, but
Well, he thought he was letting you off the hook.
I'm
Right?
kidding. But it is a thing where, when we grew up, you had a picture.
Yeah,
of a woman,
that was it.
And you didn't even. There was nothing in it, and now everything
No, for
ever.
Well, let me toss this out there. What's going to happen when it becomes AI?
It's terrifying.
And a kid can go to chat.
or awesome.
No.
Yeah, and
For
it's moving
adults.
figured out.
I'm
It unleashes a whole
Yeah.
array of legal issues,
always-
and ethical and moral
It's
issues.
moving
It's
too
always bad
fast.
when the joke bombs. You just look like a pedophile. It's gonna be awesome, and everybody stares at me.
I think it's all moving too fast in like a very scary way. On my own, at 46 years old, my desensitization, when we think about what you needed to get off when you were like young versus just the availability of everything now and the like it's really like it's warping to people. And if I had that young, like I remember I was 17 when I got my first, or 17 or 18 when I got my first porn clip on the internet. And it took forever to download, that very first version of like AOL and everything. And it was such a...
When I was 17, the internet hadn't been invented.
Sure,
yet,
right.
so, I mean,
it just was invented it was that year when I was
Yeah.
17 is when it all came out. So it was like, it was such a wild thing. And it wasn't everything at your fingertips, like I said, now in your pocket. It's like, how do you,
But not only did
how do
they
you keep them away from it?
Not only do they have everything ever, they shrink it down to. Back when we watched the movie, you had to watch the movie. You had to, at the beginning, the credits, you had to fast forward a little bit, but now it's just that clip, in the middle of the movie at the terrible thing that you. So
Right.
everything ever is available on your
Look
phone at all
people
times.
can get. There are OnlyFans sections dedicated to the teacher-student fantasy.
Yeah.
So this comes from someplace. It's just not people saying, "Oh my God, let's." It's a fantasy that people want.
But there is a line,
live.
like when you're watching porn, like I don't want to shame people out of what they're into.
No, and not
but-
everybody who watches porn gets addicted and ends up
Right.
in one of my
Yeah,
investigations.
I don't
mean, not
yeah.
everybody's Dr. Joswal.
There's a line, and if you can't stop at it, and know that this is fantasy, and this is okay, and the people that go beyond that and can't stop are the people that.
And to add to it, you've got a situation where it's 24/7. You've got all the access.
Yep.
You've got the addictive nature of it, and you've got the anonymity. These guys wouldn't say things face to face in some cases that they say online, and they
of
get
course.
all ratcheted up. And then it's like, they know it's like fentanyl in the heroin, right? A heroin addict knows there's a 20% chance the fentanyl is in the heroin, and it could kill them. The predator knows there's a 20% chance it's going to be Sheriff Chris Swanson or Sheriff Grady Judd or Chris Hansen and his crew. They know that, but
Grady
they're
Judd,
willing.
that's Jacob's boy.
Yeah,
He's a big fan of Polk County.
Yeah, I've known Grady Judd for 40 years. I was a reporter down in Tampa.
Polk
when he was
County should
Lieutenant
just-
Judd.
He's awesome.
Polk
he's
County
great.
should really.
He's a great
Polk
guy.
County, Florida should just be a reality show.
Yeah.
Insane what's
Well,
going on.
wild place.
it's a big county. It's Polk County is the size of Rhode Island.
Really, I didn't know that.
Think about that.
That's
for a minute.
crazy.
And when I was down there in the 80s, I was a reporter for Channel 8 in Tampa from 82 to 84 before I went to Detroit. And we had a guy come into the studio, and I'll never forget his name. It was Ernest Christian, and he claimed that he had been hurt by a chemical used in an orange field. Never did the story, but several weeks later, I'm 23 years old. I'm out in St. Pete Beach drinking beer with my buddies and chasing around, and we had pagers in those days. And pager goes off at the station and says, "Hey, Lieutenant Grady Judd's needs you to call him at Polk County Sheriff's Office." Fine, call him up. I said, "Hey, Sheriff," because we got a guy, Ernest Christian here, who's holed up in a house or a trailer park, and he says he's not going to come out unless Chris Hansen comes out there. Sheriff, I'm on my way, and off I go. And Ernest comes out, and Grady never forgot it. And so a year or so later, they had a case where a couple was trying to sell a baby outside of the hospital in Lakeland. And they set up a sting. And Grady called and said, "Hey, you want to do a story on this?" I said, "Hell yeah, I want to do a story." And this is before we had hidden cameras and drones and all the stuff we use today. So we had a camera in the back of a truck next to the sheriff's cameraman, and we recorded this whole thing go down. And it was, a huge deal in January of 1984.
The horrific things that happen in Polk County alone. I'm saying as a
I
joke,
know.
it just seems so concentrated there. I don't understand.
Well, I think there's a Florida element to it.
Yeah.
My second son was
Yeah,
a
you're
reporter in
right.
Florida for a couple of years, and
It's
every
Florida
night
everywhere.
there was something.
Is there
Yeah.
is there a
breaking
state
news.
that's the worst for pedophilia?
Florida, dude.
Is it Florida?
It's not.
Is
it exists
statistically,
everywhere.
but is
Statistically, it's a difficult thing to say because it's so omnipresent. I mean, it's in every state. We could go anywhere and do it.
How is that? Or maybe it has turned your stomach more on the idea, it's about being a little too close for something, and being your camera went off. It's about being a little too close. Man, I almost forgot my question now. That was so jarring. To see how prevalent it is and how easy it is to because those again, the amateur ones are 2 seconds away from just they just post something and it's here alone.
Oh yeah,
Parents out of town, and and people jump right
we
in.
call them fast movers. I mean, some guys will go on for days and days. We had a guy in our last investigation in Polk County. A guy literally said in the chat, "This isn't a Chris Hansen thing," or Grady Judd's not involved here. And who's that? It's the sheriff, and he's the guy who does the stories on all the sting operations. No, I don't know who that is. And sure enough, he comes in, he looks at me, and it turned out that Grady Judd happened to be at the sting that night. He's got a whole team down there that does this. They're great.
Yeah.
And he looks over without missing a beat. Grady Judd looks over and says, "Welcome to Polk County." This guy's being led away in handcuffs.
Well, what's weird to me is I was checking out I think it was your Instagram or something, that TikTok won't verify you. But
Isn't that something?
they won't verify you, but they're actually verifying these places that are abusing children.
Well, or that are exploiting children. You see all these TikToks, the mothers who are out there exploiting their kids for fun and profit.
Sure.
I mean, the same thing happens on YouTube, by the way. We do a story on YouTube, and I've got a presence on YouTube. It's not a major thing for me, but I do find
We do too.
Yeah, I do find it odd that somebody can monetize a sexually exploitive video of their daughter, just doing whatever. And when we do a story exposing that, we are not monetized because it's a socially sensitive comment. I will tell you something I learned just recently on YouTube. They have taken down all videos of amateur predator catchers if the law enforcement is not involved in it.
Wow.
Not just demonetized, they've taken them down.
Well, why would they do that? What is the reasoning behind that?
Well, because I think they're nervous about having this content up there and being sued because there's no, checks and balance there.
Right.
Yeah,
Because it is a
it's
great
always way
thing.
up.
I mean, to have people out there catching these people.
But is it a deterrent? It should be. You would think it would be.
Sure.
But
That's what I mean,
again,
it's not.
20
That's
years
what's
into
strange.
it, these guys are still doing it.
That's
So-
what's strange about it. That it's not that if someone, when I was at the Sting House one, when a person didn't show, it was 30 minutes later they were able to have somebody else come by, and then within that time, 2 other people have already said they were coming, and they know they're going to flake, and they don't show up.
Right.
It's very it's. I think it's bizarre how easy it is. I have a question for you. I've been watching the Takedown episodes, which is fun for one, like to hear. You don't have to censor yourself on reading transcripts anymore.
Yeah.
So hearing your voice, it's very jarring to hear that out of nowhere. He goes, and you say, "Will you suck my dick?" Like having to say is pretty
That's
funny.
weird.
The
It is weird.
soundboards are, I try to self-censor. I mean,
We have
look, there's a fine line, right? I want this guy to get jarred.
Sure.
I want him to get shaken so he'll talk to me. And sometimes that works by, reading the exact words no matter how explicit they
I'm
are.
not that big, but I could fit inside you.
There's one example.
We have some favorites.
Yeah. Well, there are a ton of them out there.
Yeah, it's just a new thing hearing you do the uncensored versions. But do you well, one I wanted to say also with the females, what I've seen on some of these things too is not so much female individual predators. That usually ends up being the teacher thing relationship for some reason, but a lot of the guy. It's almost like she's. I don't know if you call her a victim because sometimes they're kind of nasty themselves, but it seems like the girl gets sent outside to meet the fake decoy who's showing up, and she kind of takes the rap completely. I've seen that a few times. Like a girl who's almost like convinced by her guy that this is what we're going to do. It will make him happy. So it's usually kind of like a sad woman involved if they're involved.
Well, it's all about vulnerability, right? Whether you're a financial predator, a sexual predator, whatever you are, you have the innate ability to sense vulnerability. I mean, if these kids, generally speaking, are all involved in athletics, now it can happen, and I've watched it happen, but if they're all involved in athletics and school and they're busy, that's less time to be online being in a pool where the predators are hunting.
Sure.
Right? So who are they going to go after? They're going to start chipping away. When I was growing up, the rule was don't talk to strangers. Good advice then, good advice now. The problem is that the stranger on a Wednesday chatting with your child online is so adept at grooming, they're not a stranger by Saturday when they're trying to get that child out and about.
They've shared their personal stuff. And
I had to
whatever.
take my kid off of TikTok because I looked one day and he just had all these friends. I'm like, who are these people?
Yeah, who are these people?
And they just
If you don't know them in real life, you shouldn't be chatting with them online.
Yeah.
I
just
mean,
took-
that's
I
a
took it
very
off.
conservative view of this, but I think that's, my kids are, 32 to 22 now, so we're out of that box. But
Yeah.
it gets more.
I just took
aggressive
it
every
all
day.
off.
Yeah.
I took everything off. He has YouTube. You can watch videos on
Yeah.
gaming or whatever, but you can't. But now I got him the Oculus Quest, and he'll go into a room and play Gorilla Tag or whatever it is, and there's There's guys in there.
Oh, yeah.
I can hear them.
He's gonna get virtually molested. Is that even a thing?
Well, they try to meet him. I mean, it happens on all kinds of video games.
Yeah.
It happens on all platforms.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you got to get out of that. You got to
Oh,
whatever
I bet,
room
yeah,
you're
like
in.
the Fortnites and all those kind of things that are just communal games. Like, yeah, people talking to
Right,
each
and
other.
you have to you have to interact. I mean, I remember years ago when my oldest son was in high school, he was playing one of these games. I don't know, it was Fortnite or what came
Call of
before
Duty.
that?
Call of Duty. Those
Not
things.
before that even.
Soldier of Fortune.
No,
World
but it was
of
one of the
Warcraft.
Yeah, World of Warcraft. That's exactly what it was.
Damn, I thought I was gonna get it.
I said, look, you know, it's 11 o'clock. You got class in the morning. You get to bed. And he goes, well, I can't. If I leave, then we lose, and the team depends on me. And so they get this
Yeah.
feeling of belonging
Yeah,
where
it's,
they have to stay out. I said, you know.
And like you said, everybody
You
cannot
can't do
be.
that. Oh, I just did. you
Everybody
know?
cannot be exactly themselves
Right.
on the thing they get to be. That is funny. The people, how they show up, like the nerves attached to it. And I wanted to ask you if you felt, because I said I've never even been involved in like the takedown of it or the exposing it or yelling out in a grocery store, all the things I've been around that they've done. I'm just there when the person's walking up and seeing that happen. And my heart is thumping for so many reasons. One, you're like, we're about to be in a thing, like something. I know it's not going to necessarily be a fight, but it could be. But also that it's like something's getting ready to happen here. This could go haywire, could go crazy. Also, you're meeting a person who you have at least evidence to some degree that they are willing to come have sex with a child.
Right.
And like, so you're dealing with an evil person, and the people you're with, it's very...
It's volatile, but, we have made it absolutely as safe as it could be. I mean, I'm watching.
Well, now.
Right. Now.
That's the new, because I
Well,
was
the
going to
first
say the
time
difference
was-
used to be the person who walked out, which way I will
Well,
get
I still
to is my
do it
favorite
depending
thing.
on what jurisdiction we're in. Sometimes
okay.
I make the first approach. Sometimes they're
Oh,
arrested first. It depends
I
where
thought
we're
I
at.
thought it was always they're arrested first and then you come in.
Not always.
Okay.
Not always. In some cases, you're absolutely right. We do it. Different jurisdictions have different protocols.
They have to
And
handle it first sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. But it doesn't mean I still get to interview this guy, and it's still very, very.
Have you ever
interviewing.
come up with ideas
Interesting.
like when you're being creative with the new show or trying to create, where it's just like, nah, that's stupid. Like because I came up
In
with
terms of scenarios?
well, I came up with an idea. Maybe you want to throw it in.
Yeah.
That if
I'm all ears.
when you say okay, you can go, and they're leaving, but the cops are outside.
Yeah.
If they make it to their car, they get to go.
Home free. Cars base.
Now, there's a lot of cops out there, so
Yeah.
it's almost like American Gladiators
Yeah.
meets.
Yeah, they're not going to get there.
Yeah, they're not going to make
They're
it.
probably not 99%, but there might be that parkour little guy that.
Well, it's look. I mean, I'm on point every time I interview one of these guys, especially when I do get to make the first approach. And you're watching their hands, you're watching the room. We now have the ability to do background on these guys.
Oh, good, yeah.
Pretty deep. So if we see a situation where, he's got a license to carry multiple weapons, if he's got a criminal history that involves violence, the sheriffs or the police will take him down first.
Because
that's
it-
just common sense. Or if at the last minute they say, "Oh, I'm bringing 3 friends,"
Yeah.
sort this out, and then I'll do the interviews.
How
after.
much I loved and have done the impression of and they've done some montages on YouTube of it, but just your walkout line, if it's coming off of something they said, is one of my favorite things in the world.
Well, you gotta listen.
Yeah, but you come in, it's so like, because the guy's like, it's like, I can't wait to kiss your whole body. Like, would you like to kiss my whole body, Frank? Why don't you have a seat for me?
Yeah.
And
I
love
brought
that
your
so-
double Oreo stuffed and some Zimas.
I'd like some Zimas, Tom.
My favorite.
No
is-
Zimas for me. No hug for me.
yeah. Or the guy.
hug for me.
How about
The cowboy.
the Wigger kid? The
what?
Wigger kid ripping off paper towels. Or no, you were giving him paper towels.
That was in Riverside, California.
And he was like, "Yo, yeah." Just
there's
handing him paper towels.
So there's that one, and then I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, we were in Fairfield, Connecticut, where Jeff Sokol showed up, and the guy goes into the bathroom. Now, this is a calculated risk because you don't want him to get hinky, lock himself in. It creates a potential security issue. Anyway, the way it rolled is he went in. So I was waiting for him when he wanted to. So he goes in. He thinks he's going to come out and see his teenage, crush, and he walks out and sees me, and he just, we had control of the situation.
That's so. And you had the one where you knew the guy. From,
Yeah,
like, traveling
same
to
investigation.
work.
This
Is
guy was
such
on the
a-
train.
And every day with you.
Not every day, but he was kind of on the periphery. But I knew who he was, and when he walked into the Sting house, he looked at me and said, Chris, no, it's not how it looks. It's not how it looks. And I didn't put it together right away. I thought, well, maybe he just knows me from TV. And then I called a buddy of mine. I said, who's the guy, Charles, on the train? He said, that's, I said, oh, my God, that is exactly who it is. So he forever, from that day on, became Choo Choo Charlie.
So funny.
Yeah.
When he walked in, like, Chris, you're in the kids too? No. What?
He said, well, I thought the kid said 18. I didn't have my glasses on. And then the cop in the interview says, he says, well, you didn't have your glasses on. You found the address okay.
I know we're running out of time. Could I ask the one guy,
Sure.
the cowboy, Tex? You called him Tex. Hey, Tex.
Hey, Tex, yeah.
Because he seemed, I mean, he was a pedophile, but he came off at least like he was the most pathetic, like sympathetic.
He was you're talking about the guy who was like 19, 20 years
yes.
old.
Yeah. And that's like, was there a follow-up on that?
Yeah. He I think he got probation. I don't know what the actual.
That's a
terms
toughie,
were,
isn't it? Because, like I say,
is,
that
but
when I was
it's-
young, it was not crazy. Not only was it not crazy, it was
Yeah.
pretty prevalent that, like, the 17-year-old girls in school, like, if they were like the cool girls, were dating a 23-year-old guy.
Yeah,
That wasn't
but the
a mind
17
blow.
to 23 isn't necessarily illegal. But when you're looking at 12, 13, 14,
Sure.
and 17, 18, and 19, there's a reason in our society why those grades are set apart in school. There's a big difference between a 13 and 18-year-old than a 40 and 45-year-old. I'm 6.5 years older than my wife, but
Yeah.
when I was 17, that would have been inappropriate.
Yeah. I'm 8 years older than Christine. We've been together since I was 12. And actively having sex. I know, we have to wrap. This is crazy. I could talk to you for 8 hours
Well, I'll
straight.
come back.
Mr.
I enjoyed it, and I
Please
appreciate
do.
it very
Please
much.
do. Chris Hansen's new show, Takedown. It's so awesome. Available now on True Blue at WatchTrueBlue, TRUBLU.com. It's great. You get to hear him curse. And he's got a podcast, Predators I've Caught, available wherever you listen to podcasts. So entertaining, so fun. Such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank
and
you
an
for
honor.
having me. I appreciate
The
it.
great Chris Hansen. We'll be right back to say goodbye. And we're going to let Chris go and take our picture.
You're free to leave.
And we'll see you. You're free to leave.
It's great to meet you, Chris.
Nice
Are
to
the
see
cops
you.
outside?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
That's not up to me.
We'll be right back. It's Bonfire. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. That was just a portion of our actual Sirius XM radio show.
If you want the whole thing, go to SiriusXM.com/bonfire for a special offer.
That's right. And go to BigJComedy.com and RobertKellyLive.com to check out our stand-up dates coming to a city near you. Crackle, crackle.